Amos Bardea. He's a senior lecturer and the head of undergraduate program at the Faculty of Engineering in HIT. He got his PhD from the Hebrew University for his thesis on developing high-sensitivity electronic sensors. After graduating, Bardea worked at the Intel company for several years as a senior engineer and led the implementation of advanced technologies of micro and nano processors in manufacturing. At Weizmann Institute of Science, he has developed novel methods for nano and molecular patterning by applying magnetic fields known as magnetolithography. This new method has been applied for developing ultra-sensitive DNA and RNA sensors based on microfluidics and molecular photonics. Dr. Bardea, a pioneer in teaching nanotechnology in higher education, developed the first course in this area. And if that is not enough, Dr. Bardea holds a BA in philosophy and sociology from Bar-Ilan University and a sciences teaching certification from the Weizmann Institute of Science. So let us welcome Dr. Amos Bardea. Hello. We can't hear you just yet, Dr. Amos. Seems to be muted.
תפתחו את המיקרופון בבקשה אצל עמוס. בבקשה, המיקרופון אצל עמוס.
Okay, we can hear you. Dr. Amos, if you can wait just a little, just for a minute, if you can. Sorry, Amos, I interrupt you. We couldn't hear.
But in biology, we have a unique kind of thinking or way of thinking, similarity to the technology or similarity to how the engineer thinks. And this what I come to give in this presentation and see how the mechanism is agreed and how the organism is a mechanism and what is the distinguish between the organism and mechanism. So, first of all, I want to distinguish between the technology and science. So there are two directions of the vector between the nature and the human. From nature to human belong to the science. Since the human of observation in nature, in independent in terms that the information flow from the nature to the human. So the nature, the vector is from nature to the human. The vector from the human to the nature belong to the technology, since the human provide to the nature the developed technology according to the human interest. So science deals with the observation of nature in the way of the independent human interest, and the vector is from nature to human, and the technology meet human dependent interest, and the vector is from human to the nature. Causality and teleological. The essential difference between science and technology is the way of thinking. In the technology, we apply a teleological thinking, while in the science, not. Science strives to understand causality in nature, while technology is teleological in the character. We know the four causes of Aristotle. Aristotle used the four causes to provide different answers to the question. Because of what? The four answers to this question illuminate different aspects of how things comes into being, or of how an event take place. So in the example we have here the carpenter building a table. So we have 4 causes. First, the material cause, which means wood is a cause of the table. The second is a formal cause. It means a formal cause that in the carpenter mind. The third is what affects the wood to be a table. And this is a efficient cause. And the last is a final cause. It means the carpenter to build, need to be with the table, then the carpenter builds the table, and this cause is logically superior to all other causes. Causality belongs to the efficient cause and to science. It means that random process of a factor x1 affect x2, and the effect of x2 affect to x3, etc. Logically, x1 is superior x2, and x2 superior x3, etc. But in teleological, we have the nature with a model in a dash line, circle dash line. And inside we have the designer that had an interest of producing x4 and x5. And he built and design machine mechanism that produce x4 and x5 by system of causes and results that work according to the predetermining of a program. It means he apply a program to build this mechanism for produce his interest of x4 and x5. For example, I want to present these things. Let's assume that a researcher, a scientist, finds some crystal, new crystal in the nature. So he starts to ask a set of questions: material structure, chemical formation, crystal habit, lattice, discrete subgroups, properties in chemical and physical, like hardness, optical properties, electrical properties, viscosity, gravity, magnetism, and so on, or the process dating. If he finds this kind of things, he can ask all this set of all the previous set of questions, while he add another question: what is a function? Why he had this question that not was in a previous example of the crystal, new crystal? Because he assumed there are some program, and the structure that you see in this kind of screw encoded to some function. Same in biology. If the biologist finds some new protein, let's say, he can asked all the sets of the question, but he had another question. What is the function of this protein in the organism? Why he had this question? Because he assumed that we have some program, some mechanism in biology in the organism. In the past, they believe in some vitalism. Vitalism is a belief that living organisms are fundamentally different from non-living entity because they contain some non-physical element or are governed by a different principle than are inanimate things. But biology had become, in the 18th century, a science, science of physics and chemistry. Since biology withdrew from the concept of vitalism in favor of applying reduction of all the process in organism on the physical-chemical phenomenon. That is, any phenomenon in the organism will only be explained by the principle of chemistry and physics. Despite this, still, any thinking about bioprocessing is based on the assumption that organism is acting as a mechanism according to the program. So, if we want to compare the organism and mechanism in the science of biology, the mechanism is a system of causal interactions and interacting parts and process that finally produce one or more effects. Scientists explain this phenomenon by describing mechanisms that could produce the phenomenon. For example, natural selection in mechanism of biological evolution. We have there some mechanism like genetic drift, mutation, and gene flow, or developmental mechanism, which is called embryology, or metabolic pathway as described in the background of this slide. So mechanism is as a grid. Mechanism can be described as a grid of factors with a control system done by applying feedback and feed forward. Any action is a result of previous action, from the start to the terminus. Organism is a 3D grid, is a laminated grid. According to the central dogma of molecular biology, the organism is a laminated grid from the bottom layer of the genotype to the upper layer of the phenotype, with feedback and feed-forward interaction for the genome, transcription, translation, proteomic, metabolism, and phenotype phenomena. For prologues of this talk, I want to conclude that biology and technology have a common denominator technology of teleological thinking. Despite biology is a part of science with a causality way of explanation. So the similarity in the technology and biology is this way of thinking, and another element in the thinking that is a teleological explanation. Any thinking thinking about bioprocessing is based on assume that the organism is acting as a mechanism according to the program. Mechanism can be described as a grid of factors with a control system done by applying feedback and feed forward. According to the central dogma of the molecular biology, the organism is a laminated grid. Unlike mechanism, the organism perceives its parts, creates its parts, arrange its parts, and develop from within itself. And finally, I want to give some sentence from the Claude Bernard, which was a French physiologist and the father of the term homeostatics. He say life can be described but not defined. The essential feature of life is the organic creation. Thank you. Thank to the organizers for inviting me to this important meeting. Thanks for all supports that made it happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amos Bardea.